Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 5th season, we are looking at Joe Johnston's 2011 film Captain America, The First Avenger. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
And I'm Pete Wright, and my metabolism is 4 times slower than the average man.
Today we're talking about Minute 91, which begins with Steve's complaints and ends with Steve's resolve. Joining us on the show today, we have Jay Shepard, the mad genius behind MCULocationscout.com. Hello, Jay.
Yay! Hey, guys.
Thrilled to have you on this season again, talking about some locations and everything going on in these minutes. So
yeah, this is great. I'm looking forward to talking about Captain America, the First Avenger here.
The first one. So, well, let's kick it off. We have, at this particular moment, we are in the remains of the Whip and Fiddle pub. It's looking pretty sad. It's post bombing, and we have Peggy Carter. She has found Steve Rogers here, trying desperately to drown his sorrows, finding it nigh impossible due to his speedy metabolism. Before we get into the actual conversation, Jay, as the man behind the MCU Location Scout, let's talk about the location here. We're at the Whip and Fiddle, and I know this is not the Whip and Fiddle. This is a set as it's all destroyed. But I mean, you know where the real Whip and Fiddle is. I know we talked about it a little bit before, but we'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, they actually filmed in a pub. Well, I don't know about the bombed out version. I'm guessing it could be a set dressing version of the actual pub that they used for the non-bombed out version, called Crocker's Folly in London on Aberdeen Place. So it's, instead of actually building a bar set, they just shot in the corner of this bar. And there's actually some, 360 or some photos, I believe, inside the bar. You can kind of see the back room that they used where Steve and Bucky and the rest of the Howling Commandos are hanging out.
That's awesome.
Have you had a chance to visit it?
I have not. I have not been to Europe. I've been to Europe, but not since they have started filming the movies and everything like that.
Gotcha.
And when I went before, I was too young to go into a pub. So,
as far as anybody knew.
As far as anybody knows, correct.
Mother.
It looked great during the pub scenes. I loved the life and the vibrancy that it had here. And here, it's night. It was actually scripted as day. I'm guessing that Johnston wanted to change this to night because I feel like this conversation feels designed to be in this really darkly lit space. I mean, how does the look of this scene, and then on top of that, the entire film, I mean, how does that work for you, Jay?
Like you said, this is where Steve kind of gets his resolve. So this is the dark, quote unquote, moment where, everything is looking bad, right? We've just lost Bucky, and, Steve doesn't know how he's going to go on. He's trying to get drunk, which is interesting watching this now, having seen She-Hulk just recently, seeing the connections about how, characters drinking, and can't get drunk, reminding me that, the Hulk serum and the Super Soldier serum are not too far off, right? There's a lot of crossover in all of that. So, yeah, I feel like the lighting, the set design, the fact that it's just, it's literally bombed out. It is reflecting, Steve's emotional state at this point.
Pete, any thoughts on the look?
You have to remember, we're recording this, and I've had to miss a couple of recording sessions, which means in the scope of a Marvel Movie Minute, I've missed like a year. And so last time I was here, the pub was fine, y'all. Like, it was really okay. What did you do when I was away? I think it looks great. I like the ashen look of it all. It is the thing I actually struggle with this scene is not anything to do with the look. It's to do with the world's smallest violins playing for this superhero and how hard the world is because he can't get blitzed. It is I get the darkness before the dawn look at all, but okay, Steve, it's time to buck up, super soldier it up. It's really.
Would you say it's time to Bucky it up?
I was gonna do that, Andy, but I left the joke for you.
Bucky up, camper.
Bucky up, Steve. Everything's going to be okay.
You know, what I do love about this, and I am glad that Johnston did shift this to night, because I love this dark tone for this scene that, you know, they've got the fog machines working outside to kind of give it that kind of foggy look through the windows. And it has this very kind of noirish sort of feel. You know, Peggy comes in this overcoat. And so, there's a Casablanca vibe. There's the noir vibe. Like it really captures the essence of a lot of the look of films of the era. And so I really like that Johnston was kind of going for that. And then with this darkness, it just amplifies that. Something else, just, you know, sticking in the technical side of things for a few more minutes, something else that I noticed that I thought was actually kind of interesting. When we're close in on Steve and Peggy as they're having their conversation, their dialogue sounds like we're nice up and close. When we cut to the wide shot and they have a couple lines, it actually sounds like we're picking up the audio from farther away, and you have a little more echo to the tones of their voice. You don't always hear that in film. Oftentimes when you cut to wider shots, you're still using kind of that same up close audio. But here I liked how suddenly it cuts to this audio that has a little more echo to it. I bring this up because, Pete, you and I had Michael Koff, a sound mixer, on a Speakeasy episode that we did with The Next Reel, talking about Snatch. And he was talking about how frustrating it is for him as a sound mixer when he's watching films and filmmakers, when they move the camera, they aren't kind of respecting the space and the sound that it creates. And that was just something that I noticed here as I was rewatching this minute, that Johnston really was paying attention to the way the sound changed when we went from a close shot to a wide shot. I don't know if either of you noticed that, but it's something that really caught my eye.
Caught your ear.
Caught my ear. That's right.
It feels like an amateur mistake that you had to be told that, Andy. I'm sorry, but I'm on Team Jay. I did not actually notice that sense of depth, and I feel like I should have, because we're in the era of spatial audio now. Spatial audio is everywhere, right? Like, I feel like that should have been, but maybe it's just now it's just, rampant in everything. I mean, my podcasts are now spatially audioized, so maybe I just didn't even hear it.
It does give that a little bit of that documentary feel that I think parts of this film have. It kind of vacillates between the documentary vibe, and then the superhero action moment vibe, which I think we're going to be getting into here in future minutes.
Yeah, I think there's that sense to it that even though we likely are on a set here, it really feels like Johnston was doing what he could to kind of capture this as authentically as possible. I like that. I like that, especially with Johnston. I think he's a strong filmmaker with moments like this. All right, so we talked about. So Pete was complaining that Steve was trying to drown his sorrows.
Thanks for that.
But I do think it's interesting. I mean, I don't know if either of you have ever been so down or distraught about something that you're drowning your sorrows, but I did think it was an interesting character moment. And, I suppose to that extent, we're at the bottom of the second act. This is the low point for your protagonist as they, find their resolve to move on with the story. So it makes sense that we're here. But I don't know. I guess for me, I kind of like that there is this moment here with Steve, as he is frustrated about the loss of Bucky, very saddened by it, and as we kind of get through the course of this conversation, blames himself for it. And I think that's the key thing here, and that often comes with this sort of situation, is that the person who is frustrated is blaming themselves. I don't know. We watched the moment. And Peggy read the report as she said. Steve says that it wasn't, or that it was his fault. Peggy says it wasn't. From looking at the film, I mean, how do you two feel as far as the way that the scene played out? Does Steve have any fault in the situation?
You're talking about the Bucky fall?
Yeah.
The Bucky fall fault? I don't see he has any fault at all. I think I can absolutely see, though, to your point, and I will absolutely I bow to you, sir, about feeling like this is that I should maybe lay off my woe is me Steve angle, because I can see why he would internalize this as his fault, right? I mean, he watched the event like first person right there, felt the fall and was not able to do anything about it. And I think, my sense is watching that scene again that, that part of the grief is I am capable of so much. Why couldn't I do this? And that's what leads to that like post-traumatic stress, right? Like I was a part of it and helpless. And that survivor's guilt is a legit thing.
It's the whole Superman, the movie sort of deal where Superman can do everything except he can't save Lois. So he turns back the Earth and then saves Lois.
Why couldn't Steve just do that?
I don't know. Spin the shield around.
It's not just the fall, I suppose. Well, I wonder how far back Steve starts blaming himself. I mean, obviously, when he and Bucky hopped on the train, they were lured in. Presumably, Zola had some sort of plan in place to deal with Captain America. The door shuts between them, and they both have to fight off Hydra agents. And then, when he finally gets the door open, there's this the trooper that he had been fighting got back up again and blasted him. It hits it hits the shield and knocks Steve down, and Bucky picks up the shield. So, is he blaming himself for the entirety of everything that went on in the train since they went in and immediately were surprised left and right by things that were happening? Or is it specifically just that, that he wasn't there to save Bucky when he should have been the one holding the shield, not Bucky, so that Bucky didn't get blown out the door? I don't know. I feel like there are so many points that he could blame himself for. I suppose that's kind of the way that your mind works, right? Like I could have done this, I should have done that. We should have had, as we talked about last week, why didn't the entire team of Howling Commandos zip line down to the train? Why was it just 3 of them? I mean, all of these things likely could be questions.
Yeah, I think what Pete said earlier, I mean, it's survivor's guilt. There's not necessarily any logical reasoning for it. It's just it's the guilt. It's a trope as well in films where the person who is ultimately good, they're going to take that responsibility. Everything, they should have foreseen it, or, they should have been able to stop whatever, even if, as the audience look at it and go, no, I mean, there's no way you should blame yourself. It's that selfless act, the heroic person that is in these situations. And he also probably feels that since Bucky protected him so much growing up, that it's like the least he can do is to protect his friend. And yet he does a good job for a while, but then ultimately he fails at that. And then we see the repercussions further down the line in these other films.
Yeah, part of me, I also wonder, there was a change in the script and the way that, because sometimes I look at this and I'm like, I mean, yeah, I get it. It's survivor's guilt and all of this. But Bucky was hanging off the edge of a door. Steve was not close to him, and Bucky just couldn't hold on and fell. And I get it. I mean, as the super soldier, he should have been able to swing down and save him and stuff. But in the script, the way that it happened was that Steve caught Bucky and was holding on with Bucky out the door. That's when the soldier came back in and blasted and blew Bucky's arm off. And Bucky then fell. And so Steve wasn't able to actually have pulled Bucky into the train before he got his arm blasted
so
off.
Much worse.
And but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a little more, it would have disappeared in blue Tesseract electricity, but still.
What's interesting about that, though, even though I think it's worse in many ways, the fact that it gets, because the way it is now, it's just a fluke of timing, right? Like Bucky's holding on to the rail and the rail breaks off the door. It's not like Bucky loses his grip and falls. Bucky does everything he needs to do to hang on, but the rail breaks and Steve can't get there in time. If Steve's actually holding on to him, that actually increases the stakes for Steve feeling guilty about it and makes his woe is me in the pub scene a little bit more resonant, maybe, right? Like then I could really see it, like they're really leaning in on it was your fault, Steve. You can kind of almost imagine Steve's glove kind of slipping off in Bucky's grip as he's trying to hold on, right? So tropey. So I actually, given all that, I don't know which I prefer. I certainly am, I'm less inclined to love the woe is me speech in the pub without that, because the way it ends, it wasn't your fault, Steve. Let's go get some bad guys.
I have to say that I think I like it the way that it stands, because it shows that Steve is willing to beat himself up over the most, kind of smallest detail in this, but that's how much he cares, right? That shows the heroism and the heroics that he will go to. It's almost a mirror of the grenade scene, right? Where he's completely only thinking about, saving everybody else. He isn't concerned with himself at that point, and I love that scene. And this is kind of, I couldn't throw myself on the grenade fast enough and people died, right? Mm-hmm. Even though, he has that onus of needing to protect people now, right? Because he has the ability to.
Yeah. And I suppose that's a big part of it. Like the fact that's the Hydra trooper blasted him, hit his shield, and bounced, both of them, him and Bucky, in such a way that Steve was thrown into the wall, kind of dazed, which we hadn't really seen before, and that left Bucky to be the one to pick up the shield. And so, as the super soldier, I can see Steve saying, "Yeah, that was my grenade to throw myself on, because I'm trying to protect you, Buck, and I failed you because of that." And I think there probably is a lot to that. He blames himself for getting knocked down like that.
Yeah, and Peggy says, allow Barnes the dignity of his choice, right? It's don't second guess him, because he's the one who made the decision, right? Like he threw himself on the grenade to make that choice, right? He was in the position and then fell. And, Steve is now blaming himself for that, just like if the grenade had really gone off, other soldiers might have said, "Oh my gosh, I could have done something there. Why did Steve have to die? If it was a real grenade." So there's so much nuance in this scene, and it does go by relatively quickly. I mean, it's pretty much this 1 minute, right? I think there's just a teeny bit right before this, but it is that important turning point. Like I said, it's the end of Act 2 here, so it does get us down at the bottom and scoop us up and say, all right, here's the direction we need to go for the rousing closure.
Yeah, it's a powerful and brief scene. I mean, it gets the point across. And yeah, I mean, I definitely understand your point, Pete, that it does feel like, there's a little woe is me, but I think that they played okay. I think when it comes after everything that we just saw, with the train, with Bucky falling and everything, like it feels like this, I can buy it. Like, I don't feel like it's emotionally unearned to have this here.
Right. I'm on that train.
Well, don't fall off.
I have yet to fall off that train.
Jay, we haven't really had a chance to chat with you about any of these characters at this point, but what do you think about the Peggy and Steve relationship as it's portrayed in the film?
I've been a fan of the Peggy and Steve relationship. I think it's fun. I really enjoy what they decided to do with Peggy Carter in this in the MCU, and I would have liked to see more. Right, you are rooting for these characters, which makes the end of the film that's that much more emotional with the conversation that they have to have about the dance that will never happen, or will happen eventually, but as far as we know at this time, never happens. So I think Haley Atwell does a great job. And I actually remember I was watching I was a fan of Captain America when it came out. I was watching Black Mirror, the kind of Twilight Zone show on Netflix, and there was an episode, and I'm like, oh wow, this actress is really amazing, and it was Haley Atwell, but I didn't recognize her because she was not in period makeup or garb. She was, she was just normal 21st century woman, and I didn't recognize her because I hadn't seen her in anything other than her Peggy Carter outfit. So I thought that was pretty funny.
That's funny.
She was the one where she got like the robo version of her husband. Is that the one?
Yeah, General Hux, the Robo Hux.
Donald Gleason, right?
Yeah, Donald Gleason.
Right. Yes. I should check that one out again. That was a good show.
That whole show. I like her here, and I find Andy, this may not surprise you. Now that I'm on board with the fact that they're seriously crushing on each other, this has been a long running thing. Now that they're in officially a relationship, in my mind, I like her even more. And I already liked her, but I like her even more. And I think her, like, getting the opportunity to give him this pep talk in this bombed out bar is kind of perfect in the arc of their relationship. I think it's really great, and I think she's just wonderful. So,
well, let me ask you both this, because the last time we saw the two of them together, remember, we just finished this montage of Steve and the Howling Commandos, or the Invaders, whatever you prefer to call them, attacking Hydra base after Hydra base. And it was a montage that really kind of took the course of a year plus. It was a very long kind of time for the montage. We never see Steve and Peggy through the entirety of the montage together. It's always him and the Howling Commandos fighting, and she's basically doing her job of taking flags off of the map. I don't know why that's what she's been demoted to, but that's essentially what she's doing. Before that, we saw, right before the montage, is when he finds his shield, and he's very happy with it. She walks in. Remember, she and Steve had kind of had a falling out because she just saw him kissing Private Lorraine, or rather Private Lorraine kissing him. And he had this whole fondue retort and everything. And she walks into Stark's lab, and she shoots at Steve 4 times and walks out. And that was the last time that they had interacted. So there had been a lot of animosity at that point in the relationship. Does that affect how you read things here? As far as, like, is this like Peggy's chance to acknowledge, hey, we're past that. We have a relationship here of friendship, or whatever we're calling it. Let's move past that so that we can have this more serious conversation. How does that change either of your reads on all of this?
No, I think that call on me. I think that this is exactly that. This is the opportunity for her to say, you know what? Everything else we were dealing with is petty. And you just lost somebody very important to you. And we're in the middle of a very serious thing. And it's time to have very serious conversations about it. And I think that feels totally natural. Context is everything. And it's changed, and the filmmakers and the writers acknowledge that, and this scene is the showcase of that transition.
Yeah, it would have felt weird if they had picked up and he was like, I'm still mad that you shot at me. That, especially like you said, after all this time has passed.
Yeah.
Remember that thing with the shield? I'm still bitter.
And that's what a poor writer would have put together in this place, potentially, I think. Right. So.
Yeah, I am glad that we didn't necessarily need to return to that. I think that it was fine having this moment. I kind of wish that there was a little bit of the two of them at some point in the montage, like in a meeting in the briefing room or something, and we could have had a little bit of kind of like, what's the sense of things now as time has been passing? And it's just going straight to this. But I do think it's fine, because I do think it does show a maturity for both of them to acknowledge, yeah, like you just said, Pete, that stuff was petty. Let's move past that and focus on the things that are more important.
Yeah, that would have been interesting to have something in the montage, but also, I don't know, it might have broken the rhythm of what, of how they set it up, since they were, dealing with like the advancement of the war, right? So then to throw sort of interpersonal elements in there, they could have made this movie, like an hour longer too, and had an entire other subplot in it. But I think at this point they, Kevin Feige and the team were still trying to say, can we make interconnected movies? Like, are we going to be able to get to the Avengers? Now it seems like they've got so much goodwill they can just they can do whatever they want. But here, I think there was that economy. People are paying to see a Captain America movie. They're paying to see a World War II, era film. And, let's get on with that. Let's create some interesting characters that we can possibly do something else with in the future. But, we kind of need to keep that momentum going with the main story thread.
Well, and that certainly happens because as this scene comes to an end, we've got that great moment where Steve has found his resolve. And as he's sitting there opposite Peggy, he tells her and us that he is going after Johann Schmidt. That's where the minute ends. Any last comments on anything in this minute, or should we wrap it up so we can come back and finish the scene tomorrow?
I just want to get back to the Colonel. If there's any way we can get back to the real protagonist, Tommy Lee Jones, I'm in favor of that.
Chester Fiddlepot, whatever. What's his name here?
Chester, you know what? Chester Fiddlepot will do just fine.
Yeah, there you go. That sounds like a tough as brass.
Yeah.
Colonel in the army in World War II, right?
Allow me to make a note for the next T-shirt.
Chester Fiddlepot.
Fiddlepot.
What's the the Goonies character? Chester? No, is it something?
It's Is it Cobble? No, now I'm getting
that was Danny DeVito in the
Copperpot.
Batman.
Yeah, that's it.
Copperpot. Chester Copperpot.
And Oswald Cobblepot.
Oswald Cobblepot. That's right. Is it Chester Copperpot and Oswald Cobblepot? That would be uncanny. And now we have Chester Fiddlepot?
Surely they're all related in some way.
I want my 5%.
That's right. All right, Jay, remind everybody or tell everybody about your podcast and where they can tune in and read your work and all that good stuff.
All my podcasts are on retrozap.com, where I do all my shows with my good friend Josh. We've got Enjoy Stuff, which is a techno retro podcast where we talk about things from the 70s and 80s and today, and we find the fun in everything. There's no time for negativity on that show. If you like superheroes, we've got Scarlet Velocity, a Flash podcast, which will be going into the 9th and final season of the Flash after show, talking about all of the crazy things just with the TV show. We don't really want to get into talking about the Flash movie if it ever ends up coming out. But we do talk about that a little bit in Superhero Suite, where we have news and information about superhero comics, movies, TV shows, MCU, all that kind of stuff. I also do some writing over at RetroZap. So I've got my Sci-Fi Saturdays, which are iconic science fiction films from the 50s to the present. October had my 31 Days of Horror. You can still read all those articles. And of course, I've got MCULocationScout.com, where you can find the locations of the majority of every filming location for all the Marvel Cinematic Universe properties.
Prepare to lose a day if you go to that one.
Are you up through She-Hulk? Did you get all of that?
I am up through She-Hulk. Yeah, I'm about 90% on She-Hulk too, because I like to try to be as complete as possible. So if there is an out of focus shot of a freeway that she's driving on, I'd like to find it. And I did, because I grew up in Southern California, and I'm like, that totally looks like the Antelope Valley Freeway. But there are some small things, they filmed in Atlanta, and it's like, I don't know. It could be a soundstage, or it could be, someone's backyard.
Quick quiz. Where's Emil's retreat?
Emil's retreat is outside of Atlanta. It's a garden. It's like an event venue for weddings and things like that. But the column that they've got and the little water features and everything, that's all there. And they got the the little buildings and everything. It's
amazing.
Oh, nice.
Amazing resource. Again, plan to lose a day if you click through to that site.
So
if you're
much
a nerd, because you're going to love it.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Absolutely. Well, Jay, thank you so much for joining us today. We certainly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And Pete, thanks as always.
Not Pete, Andy. Chester Fiddlepot.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Spread the News by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, consider doing that for this show.